All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This is the place where we take, these really complex, cutting-edge topics and try to stack up the sources and give you the big takeaways. And today we are wading into what is, I think, one of the most critical health challenges of our time, Alzheimer's disease.
It's a huge one, and it's really defined by this buildup of toxic waste in the brain. We're talking about proteins like amyloid-beta and tau that just accumulate. And despite billions, literally billions of dollars spent trying to find a cure, we're still kind of stuck.
And that desperation, that need for a solution has fueled the rise of this.
Well, this incredibly controversial surgical treatment coming almost entirely out of China right now. It's called lymphatic venous anastomosis, or LVA. So our mission today is to do a really deep dive here. What's the science behind it? How does it work? And why are so many scientists telling us to be extremely cautious?
Well, to even begin to understand why a surgery in the neck could possibly help the brain, you first have to understand the brain's plumbing system. And what's wild is that this is a discovery that's, barely a decade old. Okay, so let's unpack that. We're talking about the glymphatic system. It's an amazing name.
It is.
Before neuroscientist Macon Niedergard and her team really mapped this out in 2013, the common belief was that the brain just sort of slowly cleared waste.
Right, through simple diffusion.
Yeah.
But this discovery, it just changed everything. It proved the brain has this dedicated high-speed waste removal highway.
And the name glymphatic, that's a mix of glial and lymphatic, right? Because it depends on these glial cells.
Exactly, astrocytes specifically. Their little end feet wrap around the blood vessels, and they basically form the channels of this highway system.
So I love this analogy. If your brain is a city, before 2013, we thought trash was picked up house by house really slowly. Now we know there's this massive hidden sewer system running right underneath the main roads.
That's the perfect way to put it. Cerebrospinal fluid, the CSF, is pumped along the outside of arteries. And it's not a slow trickle. It's what we call a bulk flow. This fluid moves in, exchanges with the fluid deep in the brain tissue, and it literally flushes out the junk, the amyloid-beta, the tau, and carries it out along the veins.
So the body has the lymphatic system, the brain has the glymphatic system. Makes sense. But what powers it? I mean, there are no muscles in the brain to squeeze the fluid through, are there?
And that's the most elegant part of the whole mechanism. It's rhythmic. It's the pulsation from your arteries every single time your heart beats. That physical expansion and contraction of the arteries, that's the pump. It pushes the fluid forward.
The mechanical force of your own pulse is cleaning your brain. That's incredible. But there's another driver, too, isn't there? Something that makes this especially relevant for Alzheimer's.
Yes, and that's sleep. This is something every single person listening should know. During deep, non-REM sleep, this clearance system can ramp up by as much as twofold.
Wow.
It's the brain's night shift. The channels literally open wider to flush out all the metabolic junk that built up during the day.
So the core idea is solid. If this cleaning system gets blocked or slows down, toxic proteins build up, plaques and tangles form, and the brain starts to degenerate. So if Alzheimer's is a plumbing problem,
then fixing the drain should, in theory, fix the problem. And that's the exact idea that led to this controversial surgery, LVA.
Right. And it's important to say LVA itself isn't a totally new surgery. Microsurgeons have been using it for decades to treat things like lymphedema, usually in arms or legs.
Exactly. They're experts at creating a bypass for a clogged lymphatic system.
So the idea for Alzheimer's is that the waste, the CSF, it leaves the skull and drains into these big lymph nodes in your neck, the deep cervical lymphatics.
And the theory is that in Alzheimer's patients, those exit ramps are clogged. They're backed up.
So the surgery, which is, and this is key, it's not brain surgery, it's all done in the neck.
Completely non-intracranial.
They go in and create this super efficient bypass. They surgically connect the blocked lymphatic vessel directly to a nearby vein where the pressure is lower.
It's like adding an auxiliary drain pipe. You decompress the whole system, lower that back pressure, and hopefully enhance the flow of all that toxic waste out of the brain. Specifically things like amyloid-beta and phospho-tau-181.
And phospho-tau-181 is a big deal because it's not just any tau protein. It's a specific version that really signals active disease, right? It means things are getting worse.
Precisely. If you can lower that specific marker, it suggests you might actually be slowing the disease itself. And doing it from outside the skull is theoretically a much safer approach.
So to make this really concrete, let's look at one of the trials in China. It's called the CSULS procedure.
Right, the cervical shunting to unclog cerebral lymphatic systems. There's one well-documented case of a 70-year-old woman with a confirmed AD diagnosis.
And what happened to her?
Well, just 5 weeks after the surgery, the reports were, frankly, startling. Her family noticed huge changes in her memory and behavior.
There was that quote from her daughter.
Yeah, that she could, and I'm quoting here, remember the neighbor she met yesterday now. I mean, for a family watching a loved one disappear into this disease, that's more than just a data point. It's everything.
And it wasn't just subjective, was it? They had biological proof.
That's the critical part. PET scans afterwards showed her brain was using glucose better, which is a sign of healthier function. And even more, tau PET scans showed an actual measurable reduction in the amount of tau protein in her brain.
That is powerful evidence for the theory.
Correct.
Unclog the drain and the brain starts to work better. So if the results are that compelling, why isn't this happening in every major hospital in the world? And this is where we have to pivot to the controversy.
And it's a huge one. The tension here is all about promise versus proof. What's absolutely fascinating is the speed of adoption. LVA has spread like wildfire across China. It's in more than 30 clinical centers now.
30. How many people have had this done?
It's hard to get exact numbers, but it's very likely it passed 1,000 cases by the end of 2024.
That is an unbelievable rate of adoption for an invasive neurological treatment. It sounds like it's being fueled by hope, not necessarily by, hard peer-reviewed data.
That's exactly it. The demand for any treatment is desperate, and this expansion has been driven by these anecdotal success stories, by videos online showing these miraculous short-term effects.
You see someone more alert or speaking a bit more clearly.
Right. And while that's wonderful for the family, it's not rigorous scientific evidence. The core critique is that the data is overwhelmingly subjective and based on these single case reports. It lacks statistical power.
We don't have the long-term standardized cognitive tests to show if this improvement lasts for a month, a year, 5 years.
Exactly. And with a progressive disease like Alzheimer's, that long-term view is the only thing that matters.
And beyond the lack of data, there's a big problem with standardization, right? We might not even be talking about the same exact surgery from one clinic to the next.
That is a massive hurdle. There's no standardized protocol, no consensus on the best surgical technique, or even which patients are the best candidates for this. If everyone's doing it differently, how can you ever replicate the results? How can you prove it works?
And then there's just the basic safety risks. I mean, it's still surgery. You need general anesthesia, which is already a concern for anyone with cognitive decline.
Absolutely. Putting aside the standard risks, infection, bleeding, fluid leakage, the real unknown is the long-term effect. What happens when you permanently reroute a part of the body's essential drainage system? We don't know. And things like post-operative delirium are a much, much bigger risk for these patients.
So with this procedure spreading so fast in one part of the world, what's the unified message from the global scientific community?
The message is crystal clear. Caution,
Mm-hmm.
extreme caution. The consensus is that we urgently need large-scale, multi-center, randomized controlled trials, RCTs. That's the gold standard.
The only way to really know.
It's the only way to rigorously establish if it's safe, if it's effective in the long term, and if the benefits truly outweigh the very real risks. Until then, it has to be considered an experimental procedure.
Okay, so if the surgical fix is kind of stuck waiting for these big trials, but the underlying science, the glymphatic system, is so strong, where else is this research taking us? Are there other ways to boost that clearance?
And this is where it gets really exciting and potentially much less invasive. If we go back to the idea that the arterial pulse is the engine,
Right.
then researchers are looking for ways to just turn up the power of that engine, no surgery required.
You don't need new pipes, we just need a better pump.
Precisely. Computational models are showing that it's all about the amplitude of the pressure pulse. So people are exploring drugs, for instance, certain beta blockers, common blood pressure medications.
Hang on, I thought high blood pressure was bad for the brain. How would a drug like that help?
But it's about the pulse pressure, not just the overall pressure. It's the difference between the high and low points. Some of these drugs can actually increase that amplitude, making each pulse a more powerful push.
That's a really clever way to hijack the system. And it's not just drugs, they're looking at devices too.
They are. Imagine a small device, maybe external, maybe implanted, that's synced to your heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And it would create these tiny, controlled pressure pulses in the fluid around your brain, basically giving that natural pump a little boost.
That feels very next generation, but there's even simpler, non-invasive research that's just as promising, isn't there? Using just the skin on the neck.
It's very compelling. Studies in aged animal models have shown that if you apply gentle mechanical stimulation to the superficial lymphatics in the neck and face, you can actually enhance the flow of CSF in the brain.
So you could have a wearable device, like a collar or a headband, that just gently massages or vibrates your neck while you sleep and helps clean your brain back to, say, youthful levels.
That's the direction they're heading. It points to a future where we could boost this system with no drugs, no surgery, and of course the lowest tech options are still vital. Good sleep, we mentioned, but also regular aerobic exercise, even intermittent fasting. They've all been shown to help this system function better.
This whole deep dive really brings us back to that central tension, doesn't it? LVA is this fascinating procedure built on brilliant modern science, this glymphatic system. But the application has just outpaced the evidence. It has to be treated with extreme caution until we have those clinical trials.
It does, and that leaves us with, I think, a really provocative thought for you to take away. If the efficiency of your brain's waste clearance system is so fundamentally tied to two things, the quality of your sleep and the strength of your arterial pulse, what does our modern world, with its epidemic of sleep deprivation and vascular problems, mean for our future?
Right. Every single night, your brain needs that deep sleep cleanup cycle, and it needs a healthy pulse to drive it. If our lifestyles are actively damaging both of those things, are we just setting ourselves up for neurodegeneration on a massive scale, no matter what surgical breakthroughs come along?
It suggests the solution might be less about some future miracle cure and more about protecting the basics,
Yeah.
right now, tonight,
We've mapped the brain's plumbing. Now we just have to make sure the water keeps flowing.
every single night.
Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.